But in essence, the context for this conversation is reduced funding from the state, lower enrollments, and those two things combined equal a very difficult budget situation. Currently, we're $3.5 million over budget. If we did exactly what we're doing right now in next year's budget, we would be $3.5 million over budget. How we have survived at this point is that we've been, for the last 10 years, kicking the can down the road. And as I understand it, the last few years, we've actually met our budget with use of reserves, increasing taxes, and increasing tuition. Well, we're near the top of our allowable tax rate. Increasing tuition, while it may generate additional revenue, it could end up costing us revenue because we know historically with every dollar we increase tuition, we lose enrollment. So we have to be really careful about where we are and how we move forward. That doesn't mean that we're not going to ask for a tuition increase, because I think we probably are, but we will not be asking for a tax increase this year like we received last year. So as a result of the situation we're in, I am asking everyone across all the campuses in every division to reduce their budgets by 5%. This is not an issue of some groups are favorites, so they're exempt, and some groups are targets, so they get more. This is across the board, applies to every division, and I'm holding every cabinet member accountable for the 5% cut. What I'm not doing is dictating to our budget managers how those cuts need to take place, because each context, each department, each situation is different. The worst thing we can do is say it's a one-size-fits-all. I want you to have the flexibility to leverage your knowledge and understanding of your situation to make the cuts that you need to make. But basically where we are is simple math. It is about business. And I never thought as a good old academic that I would be talking about business, but this is where we are. And we are no different from any family who finds themselves where their expenses are beyond their budget. What our families are doing, what we do in our households, is when our expenses are more than our income, what do? We have to cut. We don't get the luxury of asking the state or asking taxpayers or our neighbors to come in and fix it for us. And we have been doing that as an institution, and we're at a situation where the can has stopped being kicked down the road. And I think that if we do this right and we do it effectively, that we can position ourselves moving forward that will make us better and stronger. But here's where we are. If you look from 2008 to 2014, our enrollment from 2008 to now is exactly the same. We had a big spike, our record enrollment in 10 and 11, but now we are back down to where we were in 2008. That's not uncommon for community colleges across Texas or the country, by the way. But this is where we are in enrollment, and that is a big chunk of our money. But here's where our budgets have been in the same time frame. In 2008, our budget was $48 million. Now it's $61 million. Our enrollments went down and our budgets went up. They went up for good reasons. I don't think that we need to sit here and beat ourselves up over why we're here. I just want you to understand where we are and how we got here. You'll also notice that our employee base is up. So in 2008, I think we had 656 employees, and now we have almost 670. You will notice in 2011 and 12, we took a dip. That's when the state asked us to give back a lot of money. The way we did that was to offer a retirement package, and we had 41 retirements. But those 41 positions did not go back to the budget. They stayed in the budget. Our savings came from not filling those positions. So we didn't cut the positions, we kept the positions, and then not only did we fill those 41 positions, we added another 15 on top of it. So our opportunity to solve our long-term budget solutions was then. We missed it, so we're going to have to take it now. So we have to make some tough decisions. Like I said, this is not a one-size-fits-all. I will tell you how we're trying to approach this as a cabinet, that this is not having you come in here and I'm going to give you a list of 92 employees that aren't going to have a job when you leave here. That's not what we're trying to do. What we've tried to do as a cabinet is to leverage open positions that aren't filled, and every open position comes to cabinet and we debate whether that position is critical to the mission of the institution. Every position is important and helpful, but not every position has to maintain itself as critical to the mission. So, as a cabinet, we're trying to help us get where we need to go by reducing our personnel cost, by not filling open positions. But the difference this time, as opposed to the history that we've had as a college, is that when we choose not to fill that position, we will be removing it from the budget. Can I tell you that we won't have positions disappear? I can't tell you that. But I can tell you, if we do find ourselves in that situation, it will be a handful, and those people are probably already aware that they might be in a situation where their job is going to change or be eliminated. Some of those positions are not positions that are at risk for anything other than outside forces, where state regulations have changed what we're doing and how we're doing it, and have forced our hand in some cases. So we have to cut 5%. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be pleasant, but it's also not the end of the world, okay? We are smart people, and we will figure this out, and we'll figure it out together across divisions. What does not need to happen is that we walk out of this room, and instead of looking at ourselves with how can I contribute to improving the institution's financial standing, we walk out and go, well, it's just that other division. If the other division would cut people, we could get there. This isn't about an us and a them, and I talked at length about that in August at our General Assembly. We have got to move away from an us-them mentality into a we mentality. That's why this applies across the board to every division, but you have the flexibility to do what you need to do. But if you look at the cuts that we've made, because we have made some budget cuts, over 80% of our budget right now is wrapped up in personnel. We are a lean institution. If you walk out of this door and think that we can get where we need to go simply by cutting supplies and travel, you are wrong. I can show you where we have been doing that to the point where we are actually putting ourselves at risk of affecting our effectiveness. This isn't about austerity. Austerity will not work. If we hunker down and decide we're just going to stop what we're doing and we're not going to move forward and advance, then we're actually going to hurt our cause rather than help it. So we have to move forward. We have to move forward reaching our goals, and we have to move forward together. And we have to use this as an opportunity to make us stronger and better. So what we have done historically as a college is we have identified issues that we have or problems that need addressing, and then we attach a person to the problem. A problem equals a new position. That's where we are as a college. And what we have to move to is integrating our efforts, our services, our technology, our dreams across divisions, across campuses, where we can actually improve what we're doing, not stop what we're doing. I would contend that, and those that have worked with me before will get sick and roll their eyes when I say this because I say it a lot, never waste a good crisis. Yeah, this is a crisis, but we can determine who we are as a college by how we deal with this crisis. We can choose to improve as a result of it, or we can choose to cower as a result of it. I was in D.C. in December, and Arnie Duncan, who is a friend of higher education and is the Secretary of Education, said that if higher education cannot change its model, if it cannot integrate, accelerate, collaborate, then in 20 years it will be irrelevant. And outside forces will come in and do it for us. So let's integrate, let's accelerate, and let's collaborate. And I think we can get there. So here's what I need you to do, okay? Because this isn't just about what financial cuts that we need to make. This is about changing how we function and improving it and integrating it. But I'm going to read to you some things, and I apologize for reading because when I teach class, I yell at students that do that to me. But here's what I need you to focus on. I don't need you to walk out of here and focus on whether your travel is cut or whether you have the supply that you think you have to have. If it's critical, we'll figure out a way, but if it's not critical, we'll give it back so we can get there. But if you want to help us move forward, then I need you, every single one of you, no matter your division, your job title, your focus, to make students your number one priority. Our way out of this is through student success and student enrollment. So, the student is not only the most important person on campus, they are the campus priority. Without students, there would be no need for AC and no need for you. They're not a cold enrollment statistic. They have feelings and emotions just like we do. They're not someone who should be tolerated. They are our thing that we do. We depend on their success. We are not doing them a favor by serving them. They are doing us a favor by giving us the opportunity to serve them. So the only way that we're going to get where we need to go financially and be able to move forward is if everyone and every division takes ownership of every single student that walks on this campus, as if your job and the college's future depends on it, because it does. And I've had some of you come into my office, which I appreciate, and shut the door and say, Russell, we are not Zappos shoe salesmen. And I'm not asking you to be. We need to increase our rigor. We have to. Our industry partners are telling us that we have to increase our rigor. But every time we increase rigor, we have to increase our effectiveness in our pedagogy and our support systems and our processes to ensure that we remove every barrier possible for students meeting that rigor. This isn't about giving the farm away. This is about improving what students leave our college with. When we improve who they are and improve the number of students that get through our pipeline is when we redesign and save the institution to be the heart of this community for the next 50 and 100 years. So, I'm not asking you to be a Zappos shoe salesman, although I think there's a lot that we can learn from them, and there's a lot that I'm going to ask you to learn from them and some other companies. What I am asking you to be is as passionate about students as that Zappos shoe salesman is about their product. If you can embrace the call, then we can not only survive this situation, but we can move forward in some really profound ways. So again, this is not about retreating and austerity. This is about moving forward. There are things that we must and need to do to improve the college's standing in the community and to improve the students' education attainment and student learning as they leave. So that's what I need you to do. And I want to tell you what the college is doing. So, in addition to the budget conversations that we've just had, I think it's clear that we are not going to be able to build our financial future on state support and solely on taxes or on tuition. We have to raise money. We don't have a system or structure that allows us to do that yet, but we're going to get it. We have to get it. Our community is primed for it. So while we're sitting in the room worrying about 5% budget cuts, which are legitimate and real, we have people in the community that are sitting on more money than they've ever had in their life. The wealth in our community has tripled in the last 5 years, and we have not gone and asked for it. So, what I'm going to share with you today is our initial attempt to raise awareness about who Amarillo College is, and then we are going to actually start an informal campaign to raise funds. At this point, we've already raised over $1 million for projects that we have that will affect our work, but that cannot be the end of it. That's got to be the beginning of it. So, we did an economic impact report. We contracted with someone to do it, and it may have been the most important investment that we've made. They identified the economic impact that we have on the community. And in one of the conversations I had with a community leader who ended up, after the conversation, writing us $1 million check was about the 3 talking points that you're about to see. I want you to know what they are. I want you to integrate them into your elevator speech, and that when you're in the community, this becomes your talking points when you discuss Amarillo College. Because what this community leader told me is that he was shocked to see these numbers. People don't know who we are and how important we are to the community. So our theme moving forward in the community is that Amarillo is only as strong as its college. The Amarillo College Foundation has funded a 6-week media campaign that will kick off next month. You will be the first ones to see the 3 spots, and these are the 3 talking points that we are taking to the community, and that I'm asking you to help us take. So here they are, and forgive me for having to be a part of it. You should know, last year Amarillo College and its students contributed more than $660 million to the community. That's nearly 5% of the local economy, and the benefits just keep coming. For every $1 taxpayers invest in AC, they receive $3.50 back in economic benefits, an annual return of more than 14% on investment. And that's good news for everyone, because Amarillo is only as strong as its college. You should know that by earning an associate's degree, you can make about $10,000 a year more than a high school graduate. Over a lifetime, that can add up to more than $1 million. But 70% of the people who live in our area don't have a degree or a certificate. And AC is working to change that. At Amarillo College, we're helping students achieve their full potential and become productive members of our community. That's good news for everyone, because Amarillo is only as strong as its college. You should know that 61% of high school graduates in Amarillo who choose college choose Amarillo College. That's right, 61%. In addition, thousands of former students find great jobs right here, earn a good living, and consider the Amarillo area their home. And that's good news for everyone, because Amarillo is only as strong as its college. So what we're clear on is that if we're going to raise the funds that we need to support the college, that our community actually has to understand how important we are. So the 3 talking points that I want you to take with you today: 61% of all Amarillo students that go to college start here. That we contribute $660 million a year to the Panhandle economy. That's a big deal. What's the third one? I just lost it. 70% don't get it. Oh, and this may be the most important one. 70% of our citizens, according to the last census report from 2010, have no college degree or certificate. 70%. There is no greater argument for the importance of this college than that number alone, because we're not going to change that number as a community unless Amarillo College is the epicenter of that change. But when you have 70% of your population that has no college degree or certificate, and 70% of your population, when they come to college, are first generation, our current processes don't work for those students. We're going to have to simplify what we do and improve the accessibility and ease of which our students migrate through our systems. $660 million, 61% students go to AC, 70% of our citizens in Amarillo don't have a degree or certificate. We need our community to understand those three talking points. So that's what the college is doing. We're going to raise awareness in the community, and then we're going to go raise money off that awareness. So that's where we are. I'll answer any questions. I'll listen to any speech you want to make. I want to be open and transparent, so if you have a concern, I would rather you articulate it here so that we can address it rather than you take it out the door and worry about it. So ask away.
Are we going to use these, as we just saw, a lot more in the recruiting process?
Yes.
More ads with this kind of quality?
Well, and I think it's a really important thing, Tony, to say. Our own people produce that, and it's incredible. Those are 3 quality commercials. And I think that speaks to the partnership that we have with Panhandle PBS and the integration of Panhandle PBS and our matinee mass media program. Those are 3 really great commercials. And you're going to see them for at least 6 weeks on TV and media. And then we're developing a delivery or an economic impact report that will be mailed out to every leader in the Panhandle. And then we will start targeted conversations with people that we think need to be supporting Amarillo College.
But there are 5% budget cuts, so are we going to begin, do we have a target date to begin the actual cuts, summer or fall next year?
The cuts would be effective when the new budget's effective. So it's not retroactive. If you have money you want to give up right now, we'll take it. Yes.
So are you saying this is the beginning, these ads are the beginning of an aggressive fundraising campaign that many of us have been wanting to see for a long time and we have not ever really done as a college?
You are correct. This is the beginning of really aggressive targeted fundraising. But it's just the beginning.
We have to do 2 different messages. One is recruiting students. The other is fundraising for people who already have a degree and have the money to give them.
So it's a really good point. These 3 ads are not designed to help us recruit new students. They're designed to help us build awareness as a community so that people will support us with their financial means. We are going to have to be more aggressive with our recruiting, but we're also going to have to be more aggressive, and this is what I was talking about when I said I need you to make students your #1 priority. I don't care what your job is. I don't care where it is. You can help a student. You may not be directly helping a student when they walk in the door because you may not ever interact with a student, but you can make a process more simple. You can ask a student a question in an elevator. How are they doing? Connect them to a place that they need to get that they can't find. You can be a greeter. There are lots of things that you can do to help students no matter what your job is. But again, it doesn't always mean just working directly with a student. Helping a student may mean that you remove a barrier in your processes that have a back-end effect on our students.
Will we start seeing more online degrees for prospective students that cannot attend traditional classes?
Yes, I think so we offer a lot of online classes. But we have to be, and Dr. Vest, the new Vice President of Academic Affairs, and I have talked about this since her arrival. It's not enough to say we have 60% of our classes are offered online. We need to make sure that we have the right classes offered that lead to the completion of a degree online. So we can do better at that. But what we know about our students is that online is not the only option, and it may not even be the best option. What might actually work better for us is to take a page from some of our for-profit competitors and accelerate our programs. So what Arnie Duncan was asking us to think about is that higher education is built on these pillars, these 16-week semesters that he calls a pillar, that in today's world doesn't make sense. And for our students, asking them to think 16 days ahead of time is an awful lot. Asking them to think 6.7 years ahead of time is almost impossible. And that's the average time to completion for an Amarillo College student. 6.7 years. Think about how many barriers get in the way during that 6.7 years. So that's one of the reasons we're losing students. That doesn't mean that the 16-week semester needs to go away, but it does mean that we need to look at programs that can accelerate. And welding is an example. I think we are getting ready to offer an accelerated welding program. That'll be a new thing for AC. In some of our health fields, we're already doing accelerated programs. But that may be more important than the actual online degree itself. But it's not an either or, it's a yes and. As my daughter would say, as she rolls her eyes, another daddy sermon. Liz, I know you got more questions than this, and I know they're not as polite as the ones you've already asked.
I realize we're not going to get more money from the state, but how easy is it to guess what's going to happen this early in the process of where the legislature is?
Well, this is how easy it is, okay? We're not going to get more money from the state. So I think we have to be prepared, and one of the things that we will be doing next year is that we're not going to be having this conversation in February. We need to start these processes in the fall semester so that we can be more intentional about how we get where we need to go. But listen, when you look at the budget increases, I mean, there are unfunded mandates that have been placed on the college. I think by last account, and Terry can correct me, there's almost $1 million in unfunded mandates that the state says you have to pay for these students to go through without charging tuition or receiving state funding. So it's not just that the state is cutting us, it's that they are asking us to do more for free and moving on. So we're being really aggressive. I've already been to Austin a couple of times. We're being really aggressive with our legislative agenda. But I wish I could stand before you and say there is a huge surplus in the state, and therefore there's going to be a surplus contributed to higher education. But that's not where we are politically. You go to Austin, higher education and education itself is not... I don't think that it is revered as it has been historically. Well, of course. Again, it's not a yes. It's not an either or. It's a yes and that's one of the reasons why we have contributed as much time and effort as we have and resources to our honors program expansion, our presidential honors program. It's not just for the 300 students that are in that program. It is that when we're in front of the top 10% of each graduating high school class every fall, and they learn, oh, as a freshman at AC, I might go to India or China or Cambodia. They're not getting that anywhere else. It's about changing their perceptions of who we are. And I would say no excuses, that is a part of no excuses. There's not a no excuses student that's ill-prepared and then these great students over here that are exceptionally well-prepared. We are a no excuses institution across the board, and that is from every level, and no excuses philosophy is really what led us to target I think the 1,500 students that we have right now that have a 3.5 or higher. We were ignoring them, and no excuses really challenged us to think about what we were doing to serve them. But I'll tell you this, we're not going to get where we need to go by only recruiting the 30% of our community whose families have been to college. Because that's not where our community is. And it was on news last night. There are new reports this week. Our community is poorer today than it has ever been in the history of its community. So we can put our heads in the sand and pretend like that doesn't exist and try to be the AC we were 20 years ago, or we can say, no excuses, we're going to figure this out. And I know we can figure it out. And we have put systems in place that we're getting national recognition for because we're figuring it out. That's why we have people from 7 different states coming to AC, or we're going to them to talk about how to build a systemic approach to poverty. And you know what? That hadn't cost us hardly anything. But we have data that's showing that it works, and that's a really critical point. So I appreciate the question. I think the answer is a yes, and it's got to be recruiting every student and helping every student understand that AC is the place for them. Yeah.
I don't think you've talked about the importance of completion in terms of state funding.
So, and to go back to Eric's question about, right now 10% of our funding is based on completion, and our completion is 19%. That ain't going to cut it. If you look at what's happened in Ohio and some of the other states, I think Indiana, they are moving, and just to community colleges in Ohio, 100% funding based on completion. So don't pretend that this isn't going to go away, because it's not. We may be 10% this year. By the end of this legislative session, we may be 20%. But when I was in Austin 2 trips ago, there was conversations about proposing a bill that would have us be at 50%. I don't know that there's support for that right now, but we have to be prepared for it.
When we speak of completion, what do they figure that percentage off of as far as, who are the completers and what are they comparing it to come up with like 19%?
So a really important question. Because if you look over a 7 to 8 year period, our completion rates are impressive. But they're looking at our completion rates on a 3-year period. And our funding is based on completion in 3 years. And completion is transfer, an associate's degree, or a certificate in 3 years. Which is why the conversation about accelerating our programs was so critical and will become more important. Other questions?
Do you anticipate a change in our relationship with WP, for instance, as we become more aggressive in fundraising and other activities? How might that go?
It's
But on your, you look at your crystal ball and, there's probably going to be some,
Either friction or maybe new partnership opportunities or whatever?
I think we should always look for new partnership opportunities. And when we're raising awareness of who we are and our impact on the community, WT is included in that. I have had a couple of donors that have been given previews of this, and their question was, what's WT going to think about it? Well, I hope they look at it and go, oh, wow. Our community will only be better if they're better and we're better. And the only way we're going to get better is if we actually integrate and work more closely. But that's not just between us, that's in our own institution. We're only going to be better if we integrate and work more closely with each other. Vicki?
I get a lot of questions, and I don't really know how to answer it, but I get questions from parents that say, how is the ACE program doing, and how are they doing as far as completion? Do we have any recent data on that?
We have data, and I'll send it to you, and I don't want to misquote it. But from what I understand, their data is no different than our traditional student data. It's not below, and I don't know that it's higher. I don't know if you all would know that off the top of your head either. But I've looked at that data, and they're asking a lot of questions about the completion rates themselves. I think it's a really effective program when you consider that they're almost 100% first generation, and their rates are similar or slightly elevated than the college itself. To me, that means the program is working. One of the benefits is the ACE program has recently changed their processes where it will include technical programs. That's a big change and will help us. There's Debbie back here, and then
I might open a can of worms. I just have a question when we talk about enrollment. Have we ever considered maybe offering a bachelor's degree? I know community college is doing it in Texas. For instance, for us in nursing, we could do an RN to BSN, and it was all the lower levels that aren't nursing, all the 1,000 and 2,000 classes. I mean, that would boost our enrollment a lot. And the nursing would just be the 3,000 and 4,000. Is that on the plate?
well, listen, it's on the plate because it's on the legislative agenda for this session, and specifically targeting nursing. But there are increased costs that come with that, and there is increased competition. And I think it goes to Mark's point. You think these commercials are going to freak people out? When we start talking about a bachelor's in nursing, you all know the hell that will be unleashed on us. Well, no, I agree with you. But I think before we go down that road, we might need to get to, and sorry, Richard, for even saying this out loud, but I'm going to say it out loud. We're going to have to get to a point in nursing and other programs where we can actually grow the enrollment again to meet the demand that's out there. So it's not just adding another degree, it's improving the degrees that we have, improving the learning in those degrees, the time to completion in those degrees, and the success of those students in the workplace when they leave us. But it's on the table. You're never a pain, Debbie.
You know I am. The National League of Nursing, their goal is to have all nurses bachelor prepared by 2020. And that was
Yep.
with hardly any students at all. And Northwest is seeking magnet status right now, and that means 80% of their nurses have to be bachelor prepared. So that's the reason why I thought this was a good idea.
No, I'm not saying it's a good or a bad idea. It may not even be a situation where we have a choice, because it is on the there will be legislation about that particular issue of offering targeted bachelor's degrees in community colleges. I'll say this: if we have the legislative requirement, it certainly makes our job easier in the community to go make that happen than if we just decided on ourselves. Because while it may be helpful to us, you know there will be a lot of pushback on that, not just from WT, but from Texas Tech as well. So we're not shying away from that conversation, but I want to see what the legislative response is before we initiate that conversation.
Back to the enrollment part, recruiting, I can tell you as far as enrollment management, we're ready, for the tools that are needed. How soon is that going to roll out as far as, this campaign, and we need to know, when we see that we need to say these 3 points, I understand that, but at least our team, we're ready to recruit, we're ready to go, so we just need to roll up our sleeves and do it, so.
Well, I say you need to do that now, whether you have this or not, but we all need to be recruiters, because recruiters is every student that walks on our campus needs to feel like they are loved and cared for, because what we know, and we talked about this in our General Assembly in August, is that because 70% of our students are first generation and over 50% of our students are poor and have been living in generational poverty, when they walk on our campus, they're scared to death and are looking for any excuse to run away and say, see, I told you so, I don't belong here. That's why it's so critical. We can't behave like we behaved in the 70s, 80s, and the 90s, where there was these unwritten rules and these tests to make sure you were really serious about being in college. That doesn't exist anymore.
My question is, I don't really have a degree program, but the students that come in, a lot of the responses we get is, I'm only here to get as much as I need to go out and get a job. Getting that final piece of paper or program certificate is not as important for the immediate concerns. So as faculty, how are we going to advise students to stay longer to get that associate's degree or certificate?
It's a great question. I think you just got to give them data and information. And with each certificate and each degree, the impact on their earnings over the course of their lifetime shoots up significantly. So while they may be thinking about that immediate job, what you need to help them do is to think about the next job. And without the certificate or the degree, there won't be a next job. There'll just be the job that they're in right now.
Will you be doing maybe a phase 2 of advertising that might target students? Or like within the college, we could do some sort of.
Listen, so I agree. If you look at the gold standards of community colleges, and I'll frustrate Ellen because I'll have a conversation with you all that I've had with her. The impact that the Aspen award-winning colleges have had is that they have redirected their external marketing recruiting to an internal, relational-focused marketing campaign. That's why I'm telling you the relationships that you have with students are more important than any commercial that they will see on television. One, because they're not watching television in the same way we do. They're watching it so that they can fast forward through the commercials. You want to grow your program? Develop your relationships with the students that are interested in it. Don't wait on a commercial or a brochure or an ad in a newspaper, because that's not what's going to cut it. We're going to get where we need to go one relationship at a time, and recruiting is not just about getting them in the door, it's getting them through the door with a certificate or the degree, because that's what's going to save our skin. But I would say to that student, on the flip side, as an institution, we need to be talking to those industries to help them understand the value of the certificate or the degree, so that they're not poaching students before they're ready to be the employee that those businesses need from them. But the flip side is, and it's why you're going to see rolling out through the summer and the fall, we have invested in a technology called Civitas, and it is making our degrees more user-friendly. So a student will be able to log into their class, click on an icon within the class, and a degree map will show up. And it's beautiful. It looks like a video game, but it will tell them you're 68% finished with your degree, and here are the classes that you have left to take, and here's how much tuition money it's going to take to finish. And oh, by the way, here are the other 10 closest degrees you have to completing. Austin Community College implemented this new technology this last year, and their first semester, you know what they found when they launched Degree Map? That they had 1,100 students who had earned a degree that they had never conferred. Because a student was claiming to be a general studies major, but they actually had completed a psychology degree. And they didn't know it. We have to use our technology to communicate with students in ways that they understand and comprehend. And we have that information available for them now, but it's in 5 different places in 5 different forms, and it doesn't all read or look the same. There will be one place that we can all go to see what these degrees look like. And so we will be showing you that. At some point, if we can get appropriate grants, there is a piece for advisors and there's a piece for faculty that could be really, really powerful, useful tools. Real-time data that, as a faculty and advisor, you could act on right then.
Do we happen to know what percentage of dual credit students actually go to Amarillo College? And do we have something that would inspire them to go to Amarillo College after they've done dual credit?
Yes, we do know that data. 22% of our students, our overall student enrollment, are dual credit students. They are the easiest students for us to target and the hardest students for us to get, because by the nature of dual credit, the reason they would come here, they already have. So should we target them more specifically? Yes. When we had an enrollment conversation with our Board of Regents, that was the one question they asked us to focus on, and we're focusing on it. But it's not the solution. Again, it's a part of a series of things that we need to look at and improve what we're doing.
So in regards to fundraising, we have a lot of buildings named A, B, we have labs called Lab. So wouldn't it make sense in regards to talking about partnerships with community businesses and industry, when we're talking about keeping them from poaching our students, if they were more involved in the college by way of investing in the college, and that sort of standpoint, you can get them talking on multiple.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do. Well, I mean, and we're going to have to be real, and it's a culture shift for this college. It will be a culture shift for this college, because who do we name our buildings after right now? People that we love, people that had impact on the history of the college. And we're going to have to get real, and we're going to have to start naming our buildings after people that give us $1 million. And we will be having an announcement where we will be renaming a building on the Washington Street campus after a donor family who's given us $1 million for that right. But we need to be naming labs, we need to be naming bays, we need to be naming classrooms, we need to be naming meeting spaces, we need to be naming floors. And that, I mean, that's where, but we've not ever done that historically, but we're doing that now. Other questions? This is your chance. No skin off my nose.
Is there talk at the cabinet level of eliminating any programs?
No. Is there talk at the cabinet level of eliminating any programs? There have been no talks at cabinet about programs that need to be eliminated.
I have one more. How about, I know you mentioned So, you can get a degree in office administration. Why not include Microsoft Office Administration certificate in that degree? There's a number of them for CIS and other programs as well.
I agree. I would say go do it. There's nothing keeping us from doing it. Go do it. Make it happen. The more you make that happen, the better off we're going to be. Yeah. I'll have that conversation with you in private if you so choose, or if you want me to have it in front of people here, I'll do that. It was a thoughtful decision. It was not an easy decision. But when you looked at the data targets that we were charged to meet with that grant, we had not met them for several years. And so even if we had applied for that grant, we weren't going to get it, because the way that the feds are funding those grants now has changed significantly, and they're looking at past performance for those that are re-upping. And I think we would be hurting ourselves with some of the other grants that we're taking forward if we had decided to write for that grant. So what are we doing in response? We have worked with Region 16. We have asked Region 16 to write for that grant. We think that there is an opportunity for that grant to be funded if there's a consortium that AC is not the lead of, because of the past performance measures that we would have to articulate. I think it could be a really important program. But at this point, when you look at the number of those students in that program that have enrolled at AC, we have given a lot of money to a program that has not brought a lot of benefit to the college. The HEP grant. Thank you for that question. There's got to be more like it.
Are there grants that maybe departments are not familiar with that they can apply for helping preserve their programs and keep them going?
Sure, I know there are grants, but at this point we have one grant writer, you know. So I think that the conversation that Kara and Teresa and I are going to have and have had is how we open up a process that allows you to write for a grant with approval of our grants process. Yeah, we've got to figure that out, but we're not there yet. I really appreciate your time and your attention and your commitment to the college. Okay.
Just being out there, especially with the high schools, being out there recruiting and all, I know we get a lot of students that request, what about culinary arts? We have to go all the way to Colorado to go do, culinary. Or what about cosmetology? The closest one here, other than that are actually accredited, would be Clarendon. I mean, would those even come back to us anymore or anything? I know in the past we used to have those.
We did used to have them, and I'm not going to say that they won't come back, but I'll say this. Those two particular programs are incredibly high cost. Just equipment alone is high cost, and space alone is high cost. To the point where the cost actually might outweigh the benefit to the college. And one of the reasons the culinary art program is no longer is because there wasn't a need for it in industry. So we could bring that back, but there might be other ways for us to meet those needs. It might not need to be through an academic program. It might be through continuing education, and we offer targeted certificates in food service. For cosmetology, Clarendon is in our community in Amarillo teaching a class, and if you have a student that wants to be in cosmetology, that's probably the cheapest option for them. But we're not going to duplicate a program that in my mind does not offer a student a living wage for over the course of their life, when we are going to have to pay more to establish and run that program than we're actually going to get from the students that enroll in it. Scott? Okay. Anything else?
Just a comment, the grants, really important, top priority in my program.
I agree, and I've had a meeting. I had a meeting with a grantor this morning specifically about your program.
Aren't there non-accredited schools in Amarillo that offer programs for cosmetology and things like that?
Yes.
That we can compete with,
That we can compete with.
even with continuing education?
Again, I think we have to be really, really smart about where we invest our money. And with cosmetology, that is a high-cost program, not just in equipment, but in space for what we would actually get in return. I'm not saying we won't do it, but right now there is not an industry push for it. There may be a student push, but there's not an industry push. And where I think we've got to be really cognizant is the number. We may have students that want a degree, and we give them a degree, and there's nowhere for them to go use it and to get hired based on it. Because we've had history with that with our wind energy program, where we had 300 students, they got a degree, and they're working at Lowe's. Yeah, that doesn't help them or us. So just because it's something they're interested in doesn't necessarily mean that it's something that we need in our community and would actually benefit them. So I think we'd be good partners. If that's their passion, and we need people with those passions, let's connect them to those resources in the community that might help them. But I don't know that food and cosmetology are the answers to our college's issues long term.
I just don't want to leave here without you answering the question at the cabinet level. Is there any talk about a buyout, another buyout?
There is no talk of another buyout, and I'll tell you why. And you saw we took a dip in employee, and I think we talked about it. We had 41 people that took advantage of the buyout, and we didn't save a dime in doing it.
So Russell, as you have just answered that, I know another question that people are asking is, what is the time frame, the timeline for this 5% other than this fiscal year?
Well, I mean, the budgets are due before spring break. So the cuts that we need to make will be turned in before spring break. But they won't go into effect until the fall. And the board will have to approve it. And I want to be really clear about something. Because I've had a couple of you like, well, let's just not give raises. I don't think that we are competitive with our wages from classified through administrative. Not giving raises doesn't help us competitively long term. I don't know if we're going to be able to give a raise, but we're going to talk with the board about raising tuition specifically so that we can continue to try to be competitive with our salaries.
So more specifically, if we are let go, we're going to know by spring break.
Yes. And I would say if you are afraid you're going to be let go, you already know that because someone has already told you this might be an option. But I think we're talking about a handful of people. We're not talking about dozens or a dozen or even 10. And I'm not sure that we're even there yet. But I can't take that option off the table because that's up to each cabinet member and how they want to manage this process. But I know in math specifically, I know you all have concerns because the state dramatically changed the requirements where we're not getting funded for 0301 and we have a plethora of teachers that are teaching 0301. So I know you all have been really thoughtful about how you manage that, and I think we may have some solutions that will please everyone, but I don't know what the final solution is specific to you all at this point. But one of the things that happened at Cabinet is someone brought forth a position and said it was critical to the mission of the institution, and they made a really compelling case. But then we had another cabinet member that said, I've got this person over here that would be perfect for that. That's in a position that the state has dramatically changed, right? So we have to be thoughtful. I just want you to know walking out that we're not trying to be assholes. I want you to know that I care about who you are and where you are and what your concerns are, and we are trying to find solutions. But I can't promise that we will find a solution for every single person in the college, but we'll do our best. And I apologize to my mother for cursing.
Ever since I've been here, there's been rumors occasionally surfacing up that they're going to contract out the physical plant. Is that on the table?
That has not come to cabinet as a recommendation. It's not even been discussed at cabinet. Anything else?
We should have these conversations on a quarterly basis. This is really helping.
So a really good friend of mine that I trust has told me that before. I don't want you to walk out without asking the question that's on your mind. So
Is there any mechanism in place, should we scrape together any savings out of this year's budgets, that it could automatically be earmarked to roll into next year?
I think we're already trying to do that, and I've identified places to do that. And in my mind, the main places that we're trying to do that are in salary savings for the positions that are no longer going to be a part of the college that are open.
I have some really shy people around me who are handing me questions. Is there any discussion about changing summer hours?
Changing summer hours. There has been discussion about changing summer hours. And a myriad of ideas about how to change summer hours. The conversations that we're having that I've asked is, I don't want to make a change for change's sake. I want to know that if we alter the culture that we have in summers and breaks and all that, that it's actually going to have the benefit of making the college stronger and more fiscally sound. And I don't have that data yet, but we're not going to do that in a vacuum, and we're not going to do it in the dark. If we're changing those things, we're going to have conversations with each employee group, and we'll have conversations with this before we get there. It's not going to be one of those things that it happens 2 weeks before, and you just happen to find out in an email, because that's not how I function. But we've had conversations about flex hours. We've had conversations about how can we be open from 7 to 7, not just in the summers, and maybe some employees work from 7 to 4, and then some employees work from 10 to 7, and then, but again, I think we're in the process of even seeing if that's necessary, if it's possible, how you might structure it, and there's no way that we're going to be able to do that by fall. What we are talking about is having hands-on teams that would help us be open during the Christmas break, which is a critical enrollment time, and we have people come on our campus and knock on our doors, and we're not here, and we pull our advertising because we're not open. There might be ways for us to stay open, not as a full college, but to stay open where we could actually enroll students, but we're working on that conversation, and Bob Austin's leading that conversation.
Who will be in charge of going to the community with extra, or to get extra donations?
Well, right now I am. Which is, we are not, and I'm working closely with Kathy Dowdy and Tracy Doherty and the foundation, but we don't have a structure in place to manage this process. And I think as we grow it, we're going to actually have to figure that piece out. Because I didn't interview to be the president of development. I interviewed to be the president of Amarillo College. But right now, I think this is where you need me to be until we can figure out what we need to do long term. They've all been great so far.
Have there been any discussions with area school districts about identifying students that might be more geared in high school towards technical degrees?
Yes.
Altering their education path school level? You guys in these conversations?
Yes, really important intentional conversations, and the House Bill 5, which was implemented this fall on a small scale and will go full scale next fall, has forced those conversations. It is making technical dual credit a part of the conversation and aligning technical programs in high schools with the technical programs that we have. So those conversations have been happening and are ongoing. And I think we'll see the benefits of those conversations in the next 2 to 3 years more than we'll see them in the fall. Yes. Yes. Yeah, well, I mean, that has to be on the table.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. There are 300 people watching this streaming, and so would you repeat that question?
The question was, in the guise of fundraising, have we considered things like endowed chairs and professorships? And the answer is yes. We have to think about and go find those solutions. But before we can get there, we have got to identify who our fundraisers are, who are the big people that have the money to support the college, and what projects might they be most interested in. And we haven't ever done that, and we're going to have to do that. Yeah. All right. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate what you do for the college. And I hope that you're walking out here knowing that we will be bigger, better, stronger, more unified. And if we can have students be the focus of everything we do, we can get through this and we can get through it together. So put your political, territorial issues aside and walk out hand in hand and let's get this done. Thanks.